And we'll officially get started. So just want to say thanks everyone for registering and joining today's session, Power Up Searching in LEAP. For those I haven't worked before, my name is Mieko. I'm the Member Services Librarian for Public Services here at CCS. So this session is an introduction to power searching in the Polaris LEAP web application. And just to kind of reiterate, this session is being recorded. It will be shared with everyone who registered in the next day or two. So starting with just kind of our big objectives for today. Our objectives for today are learn the basic concepts of what exactly is a power search. We're going to use the Leap Find tool to craft our own power searches. And we're going to see how to save, access, and modify a power search setup. So we're going to do some demos today. I will be switching back and forth between PowerPoint and our training LEAP site. Now, out of these objectives, the one I really want to emphasize is that we're using the Find tool as a shortcut method for creating power searches. So while we are going to learn about the structure to a power search and like some related terminology, like it's nothing you need to memorize because the Leap Find tool is going to do the work for us. So here's the agenda for today. We're going to start off with just some basics about the Leap Find tool and what a power search is. We're going to learn how to create a simple power search. We're going to see how to save a power search setup and access that saved search. Going to talk about some things to consider when creating a search setup and a few different ways to modify a search setup. Now, one guideline that I'm going to stick to today. So while power search mode is available for, I think, every record type in LEAP, this session is going to be focused on the bibliographic record power searches. So while the methods and principles that we learned today can be applied to patron and item searches as well, we're just not going to demo those record types. I like to avoid patron searches in these recorded sessions, just so that I don't have any patron information on screen in our recordings. And then also in terms of item searches, while I am going to reference item record searches for like illustrative purposes at times, I'm just not going to work those into our demos. And the big reason for this is that today's demos are framed around working with patrons at a service desk, which, as we all know, frequently includes placing holds. And if doing an item record search, it just becomes too easy to place an item level hold instead of a bib level hold. And so I just kind of want to avoid those scenarios. Also, it goes without saying, when you're in a consortium setting like ours, an item record search results list can be like extremely overwhelming when you're searching holdings of 28 libraries. So the very first thing I want to do today is just give a quick anatomy of the Leap Find tool. So yes, it's something we're all familiar with, but we're going to be referencing different parts of it today. So I just kind of want to make sure we're all on the same page with the terms that we use to describe the different parts, because those are going to come up pretty frequently in today's sessions. So in the Find tool, at the top bar, this is what I refer to as the configuration. So these are the different components that tell the Find tool how and what to search for. That first column is the search database. That's like the official name for it. And this column tells the Find tool what type of record we're searching for. So are we looking for bib records, item records, patron records, hold request records, etc. The second column we see is what's called the mode. And this tells the Find tool how we're searching. So the default mode tends to be the basic search. That's probably what we are all most familiar searching with. And then moving down, the third column is what's called the qualifier column. This tells the Find tool what areas you want to search in. So you can search specific areas such as title fields or author fields, or you can do a keyword search, which looks for your term in all indexed fields. And the final column of the configuration bar is the relation column. And this tells the find tool how to apply your search terms. So for example, a keyword all relation tells the find tool that a result must contain all your search terms, but doesn't care about the order, where a phrase relation tells the find tool that a result must contain all your search terms and in that specific order. And then finally, we'll also be working with filters today. And as we all know, this is just where we can apply additional qualifiers to our search. So with the find tool, I would say that one of my big wish list items, probably one of your big wish list items from day one of using Polaris, has been that ability to save filter settings. So in a consortium like ours, it would be really helpful for our staff if they could configure the find tool to like automatically limit to records held by their library. In this way, when you're helping patrons locate materials, you're right away prioritizing what you have in your local collection. Now, we currently can't save filters so that they're automatically applied to our searches. However, we do have access to Power Search Mode in Leap, which allows staff to configure and save searches and search setups for easy access. So we're going to see today how this mode can streamline your searching in Leap. And before we start demoing, I think it's important just to kind of know what is a power search and how does it work. So here's a screenshot of a power search, a basic power search. Now, when I'm referencing a power search, I'm referencing a search mode that's available in Polaris Find Tools. It's both Leap and the staff client, but we're focusing exclusively on Leap in this session. Now, Power Search Mode uses Common Command Language or shorthand CCL to build a query. And if you're writing a query from scratch, it's a more advanced way of searching where you're instructing or commanding the find tool how and what to search using access points. But like I said earlier, we're going to use a shortcut method where we don't write queries from scratch. So we don't need to learn these access points and whatever, numbers or codes that you need to use with them. However, I do think it's important to have a general sense of what one of these queries look like. So I do want to give some basics of a power search structure. So we just learned that with a power search, we're using access points to tell the find tool what to search for. A basic example, the access point TI tells the find tool that we're querying a title. And since we're using Polaris, that access point AB tells the find tool that we're querying by assigned branch. And what these access points are searching is probably going to look pretty familiar because they are the same types of qualifiers and filters that we're used to searching with in a basic search. We also apply relations when searching access to an access point, which again is going to look familiar because they are already part of our basic search setup. So we just learned that relations are used to tell the find tool how to apply our search terms like a keyword all search or a phrase search. And then here are some basic command examples combining the two, right? So the command for a title search with a keyword all relation will look like TI all and then equals our search term. And a command for a title phrase search is going to look like TI for title, ADJ, equals our search term. And here, ADJ stands for adjacent. We're telling the find tool to look for our search terms adjacent to one another, which is what we're doing when we're searching for a phrase. Like I said, nothing that we have to memorize because the find tool is going to do all this work for us. Then another element that we're going to see in Power Searches are database ID numbers. You don't see these numbers when you're doing a basic search, but everyone has already worked with them. So you're likely familiar that when you're setting up a search in the Find tool, there are certain qualifiers that have predefined lists. So these are things like assigned branch, lists of patron codes, or lists of item material types. And in a basic search, when you use one of these qualifiers, you're then selecting what value you want to search for from that list. Now, some of these qualifiers are pulling these values from a database table, and that's how the Find tool knows what to display in the list. And in these tables, each value has a numerical ID assigned. So what this means is that when a Power Search is set up to look for one of these predefined values, it typically uses a numerical ID if referencing a table on the back end. So this means if I'm searching for items with a material type of book in a basic search, I will just select that checkbox next to the term book. But in a Power Search, I'll see the query, the access point, MAT, material, equals 9, which is the Polaris ID for book in my database. Again, that's a lot to take in. If you want it to be, like Power Searching can involve learning its own language, but it doesn't have to be. You can still use that Power Search mode without needing to know any of those access point abbreviations or the database ID numbers. And that's because the Leap Find tool will translate your basic search into a Power Search for you. So how we do this is we build our search in basic search mode. And then all you have to do to change it to Power Search, change it to that common command language, is change the search mode dropdown from basic search to Power Search. So let's see what this looks like. Our first example is going to be a really simple search where we're doing a bib keyword search for title, and we're going to use the assigned branch filter. So here are the steps written out. In the Find tool, we're just going to set up our search in basic mode and then change the search mode from basic to Power Search. So let's see this in Leap. We're going to do our first demo here. Let me just flip over to my Find tool. Can someone just throw in chat if you see the Leap Find tool? Okay, good. I always get worried that I'm not screen sharing the correct way and that you're just stuck on my slides. Okay, so in the Find tool, let me open that up. I currently have my Find tool set to open right to a bib basic search, right? There's my search mode, basic search. And let me set up that search first. So for this demo, I'm gonna set my first qualifier here to title. So that's my first search condition. I'm gonna make sure that this relation is set up how I want. I typically like doing keyword all search, so we're gonna keep it there. And then like I said, we're going to add our assigned branch filter. So let me just pop that open. And for this demo, I'm going to be Crystal Lake and click apply. Now for our very first demo search together, I'm just going to type in a title because it's going to help see that translation process better. I'm just going to pop in a title here. Okay, so I've got my Find tool set up to search for my title and filtering to my location. Now, like I said earlier, to translate this basic search into a Power Search, all I have to do is change this search mode here from basic to Power. And here's my search setup translated into a Power Search. We can see, our two parts here. So I've got that title, keyword all, search for my terms. And then you see my search terms are contained within these quotation marks. I have my assigned branch defined. And the power search is taking that database ID number for the Crystal Lake branch, which here is 12. And you'll see each element is also defined by parentheses. Now let me switch back to basic search real quick. So I just kind of reset things, because the whole purpose of this session is learning how you can create search setups so you have them at the ready. If I have a search that's looking for a specific title, it's not going to be particularly helpful. But now that I've toggled back, I'm still set up for my title search. I still have my assigned branch filter applied. And then to get that search set up, before I add in any search terms, I'm just going to do that translation again and go from basic search to power search in my mode. And this time, because I didn't type in any search terms yet, there's nothing between those quotation marks in my title command. So when I say search setup, this is what I'm referring to. Everything is in place except for my actual search terms. So here, if I wanted to search for a title, I can place my cursor in between those quotation marks and enter in my search terms. And this way, when I'm getting ready to search for a patron, enter in my search terms there, I can launch my search and I have my results list here. So that is the basics of how you translate a basic search setup into a power search in Leap. I'm just going to toggle back and forth between my search modes real quick so we are set up for our next demo. Now, let's say, go back to my slides here. Let's say this type of search, or I'm searching by title and I'm applying my branch filter, is my most frequently used search. But whenever I start a search in the Find tool, like I have to reapply that branch filter. So what I can do instead is I can save my power search setup so it's at the ready for me whenever I need. Notice how it says on saved here at the end of the configuration. This just shows me that I haven't saved a search yet. To save a power search setup, I will click the floppy disk save icon at the end of the search bar. I'll give my search a name, and then I'll just click save to finish saving it. Pretty straightforward, right? Let's go back to Leap so we can save our current search setup. So again, I can tell here that it's not yet a saved search because it says on saved at the end of my configuration. So all I need to do to save this, I will click the save icon at the end of my search bar, and I will give my search a name. You can name your search whatever you want. I'm going to give it a name that signals what the search conditions are. So here I'm just going to say title, keyword, all search plus branch. And I'll just click save to finish saving. Now it shows the name of my saved search at the end of my configuration. And if I click this drop down here, I will see a list of all of my different saved power searches, and then I can just pull one up, whichever one I want to use at the time, pull it up, enter my search terms in, and search. Okay, let me just close out of the Find tool real quick so I can show you what it looks like to pull up a saved power search if you're working like with a new patron at the service desk. So clicking on the Find tool, it's still going to open to my default search settings, which again is currently set to a bib basic search. I'll click on the search mode column to change my search mode from basic to power search. And then I'll click here where it says on saved to see a list of all of my saved searches. and I'll select the setup that I want from the list. And again, I'm all ready to type in my search terms and launch my search. So you may have noticed I'm saying my saved searches and not our saved searches. These saved power searches are tied to the Polaris username. So not to the workstation, not to the library branch. So this means any power search you create and save will be accessible to you no matter what workstation you log into. It also means that your search won't accidentally be modified or deleted by a colleague, right? You can really curate your saved power searches to your needs and your search preferences. However, I will say one downside of this is that if your colleague happens to create a really helpful saved search, you will have to recreate it and save it yourself. Let's move on to our next demo. Um, Before we go on, I'm just going to pause and just see if there's any questions coming through. Okay. So our next demo. Now, when thinking about search setups that can potentially help streamline, oh, I do have something coming through chat. Oh, is there a limit to how many power searches you can save? To my knowledge, I have not run into that limit. I will say don't think I've ever really had more than like maybe 10 or 12 saved at once. Um, so unfortunately, I tentatively want to say we don't have a limit, but I will experiment with that and see how many I can get up to. So when thinking of like some searches that could be helpful, there were two big ones that came to mind. Search setup that automatically filter by branch, and then a search setup that would automatically exclude e-content. So right when you're working with a patron, electronic format just may not be an option for them or just may not be something they want. However, our database integrates some e-content like Overdrive ebooks and e-audiobooks, which means that those records will appear in our Find Tool searches. So our next demo is going to show us how to set up a search setup that limits just to physical materials. Now, this search takes advantage of a bib record qualifier called type of material, or TOM for short. So type of material is a general description of the format. It's a value that's assigned to the bibliographic record. And you'll see it's also available as a qualifier when you're doing bib searches in the Find tool. Since Tom looks at format, it also includes electronic formats like we see in the screenshot here. So here are the steps written out for our next demo. Most of these steps are the same. We're going to start by building our search as a basic search, configure it based on our preferences. Then we'll add the type of material, or TOM, as our filter and select e-content types. After that, we're going to translate our search setup into Power Search. And our one additional step here is that we need to change that relation of our filter to the search. So I just want to show you some screenshots before we demo this. So this screenshot is right after we translate our search. So like we saw in our last example, when we apply a filter in the Find tool, it automatically applies it to our search with this AND statement. So this is telling us that it's looking for our search terms plus this additional filter. So this would be like really helpful if we only wanted to look for e-content. But for this example, we want to consider all formats except for e-content. And in order to work that into our search, all we need to do is adjust this AND statement to not. So let's move back into Leap and see this in action. Okay, so I'm gonna cancel out here, go back in, so we start fresh. I'm going to start with my basic search. First, let me just run a search so we have something to compare our final Power Search setup to. So let me just run a basic keyword search for the author Colleen Hoover. And in our results list, we have 190 results. And scrolling down, we'll see that there's a lot of e-content in our results. Okay, let me just reset everything again so we can set this up from scratch. Last time we did a title search, for this example, I went to that search that will consider all indexed fields. So this time I'm just going to stick to my keyword qualifier here. And to round out the configuration, I'm just going to keep my relation to keyword all. So we're not going to change anything in our initial configuration. But I do have to apply that type of material filter. So I'm going to move into our filters area, add a condition, and I'll select type of material from my list. And then I'm going to just scroll down so I get to the E's and select the e-content type of materials or TOMS. Now let me apply this filter to my search. We've got things mostly set up. So again, it's that translation part. I'm going to translate my search from basic to power so we can see what this looks like in Power Search language. So I've got the keyword part of my search, and I've got, those quotation marks where I can enter my search terms. I have that and statement linking the configuration to that filter that I added. And then I have the filter in Power Search language. I've got TOM for type of material, and then a list of those abbreviations for the e-content. So now again, with this search setup, it's using an and statement. So right now, we're telling the find tool that we only want to see e-content. To change this to exclude those e-content TOMs, I'm just going to delete this and type in not. Now we've changed that relationship between our search terms and our filter. So now the find tool is going to exclude any records with those e-content formats. I'm going to save this search setup real quick so we have it for the future. So again, to save, we'll click that save icon at the end of our search bar and give it a name. I'll do keyword all, no e-content, and click save. Okay, so we saw that search initially. Let's run our search again to compare. I'll put my cursor in between those quotation marks and enter my search terms and launch my search. So excluding e-content, we filtered our results list down to 85 titles. So now, we can sort this list however we want, browse through it, check out a title, and see what the patron may want or want to put on hold. Cancel it there. Okay, so those were a couple examples of some general filters that we could potentially apply to anyone. Now, there's a lot of potential to power searching, including crafting search setup based on your specific needs, such as like if you work in the kids or teen department versus the adult department. Now, in order to create helpful power searches for yourself, it's also helpful to understand how data is set up in Polaris and how that data is applied to your library holdings. So I'm going to illustrate this with an example. Earlier, I said we weren't going to demo item record searches, but I would sometimes reference them in an example. And this is one of those times because it really highlights how our data and record fields can impact a search. In this example, let's say someone is interested in crafting an item record power search for children's DVDs. So, I can suggest creating an item record power search where you use an access point of shelf location, right? Shelf location is an option because it's one of those qualifiers available to us when we do an item record search. Now, this suggestion would probably work really well for a library that has a designated kids department DVD shelf location. However, another library may have a very broad shelf location like first floor or kids room, or maybe there's another library that has more specific shelf locations like kids Disney DVD or kids TV series. So for those libraries, a shelf location access point, it's not going to be the most effective. So again, the effectiveness of an access point can depend on what your goals are when searching and how the record fields and data are used in Polaris. So as you're thinking about what search setups will be the most helpful for you, you'll want to think about like what filters do you apply most often when you search? What kind of titles or materials you search for most often? And like, what do those records have in common, right? How does CCS or how does your library use those record fields or the MARC record fields? And what access points can help you the most in your search? In addition, since we're part of a consortium, or like even if you're part of a multi-branch library, you also want to consider what access points are unique to each library and like what access points are shared between all CCS libraries and branches in your group. So for example here, all CCS libraries use the same set of collections. Here they are listed in the screenshot. And this is going to bring us to our next demo. For our next demo search, we want a search for when we're working at the team desk. And we want a search that will not only allow us to search our team collection easily, but also a search that we can also modify if we wanted to search holdings at other libraries in the consortium, excuse me. Now, an item search by shelf location may work if I just wanted to search my own library's holdings. But again, those shelf locations are unique to my library. So it's not a great choice if I want to be able to search like system wide or even between different branches. And so that's where shared access points will be the most useful. So here's a list of some shared Polaris codes that are going to come up in searches. And, you know, don't forget with bibliographic records, we all use the same bib records. So bib level information, like the type of material that we just used in our last demo, is automatically in use by all libraries. Okay, looking at our shared collection codes again, so you have a visual. And for those who may not be familiar with CCS collection codes, these are set up to aid annual IPLAR reporting. So they're broken down by age group. Since I know that we have collection codes that limit to teen materials and that all libraries in our consortium use these collection codes, this is a great access point for what I want to achieve with my search. And here are the steps we'll take to set up, translate, and save a bib search for teen materials at my location. So after setting our like main qualifier and relation, I'll add in those team collection codes and assign branch as filters. So going back to Leap for our another demo. Let's create this search together. And just like last time, I'm going to start off with a basic search. My search preference is to keep things to all keyword fields. And this way, I can look for things like author, subject, series, as well as those titles. So I'm just going to keep this search keyword search and keep my relation keyword all. So this is my configuration. Again, is just kind of staying as is. Next step is to add our filters. So I'll click on the funnel icon and add condition to add our first condition. For my first condition, I'm going to limit our search to teen records. So I'll select the collection filter and then use that list to select the teen collection code. So anything with a teen in front of it, I'm going to click the little checkbox for. My final condition or my final filter is to limit to my location. So again, that's going to be that assigned branch filter. So for this one, I'm going to click the plus sign to add a condition. Indicate that I want to limit by assigned branch and pick my location from this list. For this demo, I'm going to be Des Plaines Public Library. Okay, I've got my extra conditions, my filters here. I will apply those to my search. My search is set up. What's that next step? We're going to translate this search into a power search just by clicking on basic search mode and swapping over to power search mode. So in our translated search setup, it's searching keywords, and there's that space where I can add in my search term. I have an and linking my filters. Then we added our collection filter, which is represented by the COL, and a list of numbers, right? These are those database ID numbers for the collections that I selected. And then finally, we added in the assigned branch filter. So I have another and condition here, linking an AB for assigned branch equals my branch ID, 14 for Des Plaines. Okay, before we go on any further, I am going to save our search setup. So I'll click that save icon at the end of my search bar, give my search setup a name. This time it's going to be a teen department keyword plus branch. So this is an example of an access point that we can use to limit to age group based on what service desk we're at. And it also sets us up for our next demo. So I'm going to build off of this last example to see how to modify a saved power search, right? Right now, we're in the teen department. I'm helping a patron who is interested in anything that takes place in Leigh Bardugo's Grishaverse. So I'm starting with this saved search setup I have that's filtering to teen collection codes and my branch. Let me just type in a search here. So this is a great start. Let me just launch my search. I can see what I have at my location. But let's say the patron has read these and we want to see what other Grisha related material is available at the other libraries in our consortium. Now, instead of setting up a brand new search, I can modify my current search to adjust what it's searching just by deleting the desired access point. So in this case, I want to expand my search to include the other libraries. So my modification will include removing the assigned branch access point. Now, when you're modifying a power search, the big thing to pay attention to, right? We got to pay attention to that search syntax. So when you're modifying or removing part of a power search, the key is to make sure that search syntax is still orderly. And this means that you'll want to remove any relations or those, those ands, nots, those booleans linking your access point to the rest of your search. And you'll also need to make sure that any parentheses or quotation marks come in sets. You don't want one just hanging there. So this was that search setup that we just designed. This is the search setup with collection and that assigned branch access point. To remove this access point, we want to delete anything that's in red. So this includes the actual access point AB equals command and We also need to remove that Boolean that's linking the access point to my search. So I'll also need to delete the and. Now, for syntax, we'll pay attention to those parentheses that are grouping our access points. As long as we have a full set of parentheses, our search will run. So this is what the modified search will look like. So here, you'll see even though there are two sets of parentheses around a single access point, they're full sets, right? There's a beginning and an end for each parentheses. So our search will still run. Here are the steps for this demo written out. And just again, to summarize this, we'll open our saved power search. We'll remove that Boolean and access point, so our search still follows proper syntax. And then we can enter our search term and launch that search. So let's go back into Leap and set up our final demo so we see what this looks like. Okay, so again, let me cancel out and go back in. I'm switching from basic to power, and this is how we can get our team department keyword plus branch saved search. So for here, I'm going to modify that search by removing the assigned branch access point along with that and statement. So let me just delete this. So I've got deleted my access point, and I'm just going to take out that and. Okay, so I'll also just take a moment to check to make sure that my parentheses are still in sets. So this is our modified search setup. And let me redo that search. We're going to search Grisha. So I'm now viewing related titles from across our consortium. So not only my own location, but all other CCS locations. And we can go through this list, identify a title we don't have, and place a request. I also want to mention, making these modifications does not impact our saved search setup. So I can come back in here and just reset my search at any time by clicking my saved search setup. You can at any time, if you prefer these modifications, you can just either click save, give it a new name to kind of do like a save as, or click just save without modifying the title to overwrite your existing saved search. We'll also say, don't be afraid to play around with modifications when you're searching, because your original, like I said, your original search setup, it's still going to be there. And then, in terms of worrying about that search syntax, like I think our eyes are very adept to symmetry. I think it will be surprisingly easy for you to spot any asymmetrical elements like an unclosed parentheses. And I do want to quickly show you just what some errors look like. So if you do have something, let me reset my search here. Get my term and launch. So if you do have something like an unclosed parentheses, let me just delete one of these parentheses at the end. Leap is going to shoot out an incorrect syntax error. Or, if you accidentally delete like an equal sign, let me just take this one out here. The error message is going to kind of give you a sense of where to look. So I can see incorrect syntax near my list. So then I can kind of, bring my eyes around to that area and see what might be missing, what I accidentally took out. And then finally, I do want to show you my favorite error. I love showing this off. So I'm deleting the assigned branch access point, but I'm going to leave everything else in place, including that Boolean operator and the parentheses that's closing out my filters. Let me launch this. And so Leap gives me a catastrophic failure message. When I see this, I know it's time to get up, shut it down, take off. But in all honesty, like pull up your Save Search and try again. And that's the beauty of searching, right? We're not editing item records. We're not updating patron records. It's searching. So if something doesn't go as intended, just close out of the Find tool and start again. Now, there is one final tip that I want to share here. So I don't know how many people are aware of this, but with the Leap Find tool, we can set it to open up to a specific mode. So when I click Find, let me close out of here. When I currently click Find, you'll see that my Find tool opens right up to a bib basic search. Now I can change this default so that, it opens up to like a patron search or an item search. Or if you think you're going to use power searching as your primary search mode, you can also set your Find tool to open directly to the power search mode. And to set your default, let me just change over to power search real quick. To set my default, we'll use this star at the end of your search bar. So let me click that. And it prompts you to say you want to save the current search and column settings. And if I click Save, you'll see how it's highlighted yellow now. That just shows that this has now been changed to my default. So if I close out of my Find tool and go back in, it will take me right to a bib power search. And then just saves a couple clicks. I can, from here, then just choose the saved search setup that I want from my list. And again, this is another setting that's tied to your username. So you can set your default to be like whatever you prefer without messing up your coworkers' settings. Okay, close out of Leap. And let's go back to wrap up our slides here. So just kind of summarizing what we've seen today, we learned what a power search is and how it's structured. We learned that we don't need to know the power search language to build searches from scratch. We can use that Leap Find tool to translate a search into common command language for us. We saw some examples of how to create simple power searches, and we learned how to save and access a search setup for future use. We saw that understanding our library's data is going to help us craft effective searches. And finally, we learned some simple methods for modifying a power search setup. So I really hope that you were able to get something out of this session. Before I open it up for questions, I just want to remind everyone, you should see the recording in the next day or two. You'll also see it linked to in an upcoming issue of CCS News. We also have a training evaluation form. I'm just going to copy this link and post it in our chat. If you are able to fill this out, we really appreciate it. There's a question in there that asks for suggestions for topics for future training sessions, which we really rely on when planning training. So, and then of course, as always, if you find you have questions after we finish today, please do not hesitate to send out an email to help@ccslib.org, or feel free to email me directly if you want. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording and we will open it up for our questions.